Blog Talk Radio.
First World Order Radio. Finally, we are on the air. No doubt. All right.
There's always going to be somebody in the building on First World Order Radio.
We get on into some of that order consciousness tonight.
First World Order Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m.
We got to talk about what is taking place on the planet.
There's always going to be somebody in the building on First World Order Radio. First, we need to let you know we're going to be doing more shows, giving out more information on Wednesdays. Wednesday at 8 o'clock, we are now going to make history the hottest day of the week.
Preceding others in time, order, importance. The most prominent parts, voices, or instruments. Earthly state of human concerns in existence. And indefinite multitude, quantity, or distance. System regulates to bring about specifics in the view based on value and natural characteristics. Current radiates electromagnetistics of sound through the air, same as your thoughts transmits it. Preceding others in time, order, importance. The most prominent parts, voices, or instruments. Earthly state of human concerns in existence. And indefinite multitude, quantity, or distance. System regulates to bring about specifics in the group based on value and natural characteristics. Current radiates electromagnetistics of sound through the air, same as your thoughts transmits it.
You need to understand how magical this, something like this every Wednesday can become. So you need to start getting your calendar right, get your schedule right. You need to know our intentions straight out.
All right, so, these clues are given throughout the various languages was to piece the puzzle of this ancient mystery school back together again.
And what we plan on doing, both of us, is bringing y'all some surefire dynamite. We're going to take this level up a notch. We're going to have stuff to do here. This is not just going to be about philosophies and theories, shit that works.
You have an activated pineal gland which that produced this black chemical called melanin.
What we did was gave a hard line in the sand between the different definitions of esoteric study and exoteric study. Playtime is over.
Peace. Back again with your host, Dr. Alim Bey. I'm going to bring on my co-host, Brother Fahim L. Brother, are you here?
Hey, I tell you, Washington East, Dr. Alim.
Hey, I tell you, Washington East. How you doing tonight, brother?
Doing well, brother. I'm doing well. How are you and the God is doing?
Right. I'm doing good. We're going to be going into a deep discussion tonight concerning the Million Man March 20th anniversary. Brother, did you get a chance to check it out?
I didn't get a chance to check it out. I sure didn't.
Okay. Well, the main thing of it, based on 20 years, I would thought that it would get definitely much more serious in content. It seems that the one from 1995 and even the one from 2005 was much more powerful as far as the content.
I was at the first one.
Well, the first one was, Minister Farrakhan did a speech in which that he was laying out the Masonic codes in which that was in Washington, D.C., the Techno, which is the obelisk being 555 feet tall, the Lincoln Memorial essentially being formed after Ramesses II or Ramosis II. How the Techno is along with the water, which is the pond or the pool, is symbolic to right there off the Giza Plateau. Now, you know that Washington, D.C. was designed by Benjamin Banneker as well as also he was talking about the Capitol building. Was designed and put together by 200 brothers. So, I mean, he was just going into a lot of information like that. A lot of information that was coming from or came from the Nile Valley Contribution to Civilization by Anthony T. Broder, which he breaks that information down in there. So that's really what the first Million Man March was concerning. The one in 2005, the speech was more so geared towards family, men, even the first one was talking about men coming back and being head of household, as far as being supportive of the family structure, the children, so forth and so on. The second one was more so like that in a sense also, except it was not as, not as detailed as the first one. Mr. Farrakhan didn't go into too much Masonic codes in that one. It was more so the unification of the various leaders and from the past organizations and putting together a new movement in which that we was hoping to see a new movement come about. This one here is also spoken of as having a new movement to come about. At the end of this speech, he made reference to the fact of those who are leaders meeting him in a hotel in order to discuss the next moves in which that's supposed to be made as far as a whole for justice or else. Of course, we know justice or else was the theme, the 20th anniversary theme based on all of the recent killings and assassinations that have taken place by police in the so-called black community. That was number one on the list, actually. Of course, they had Black Lives Matter. The sister who formed that, they're speaking. Her speech was probably one of the better ones based on the lack of, like I said, to me, realness. Because these are things in which that we should be speaking of beyond, beyond just, just theory or hypotheses. You know what I'm saying? Even though it's a somewhat valid movement as far as Black Lives Matter, the problem is that the usage of just the word black in context of the people, as we know, and it's not just coming from a Moorish perspective. This is just coming from the fact of, even Malcolm X spoke about the fact of how black is seen within the Webster's Dictionary as something negative. And then when you go to the Black's Law Dictionary, it states that the word black or black person in particular is a generic term in which that essentially, being that it's a generic term, it's not specific. It doesn't tie to land mass. It doesn't actually determines a person's ethnicity. And really, there's no such thing as a race in that regard. So when they put black race on the birth certificate or your ID or, or driver's license or et cetera, we know that these are colorful terms, colorable labels. And, this is what we really supposed to have been talking about. There was one minister in which that did speak about the CDC and the CDC vaccinating our children and our little boys and then he was using the reference to Pharaoh attempting to kill all children or children under the age of 2. Of course, that's biblical, in which that actually we see that twice, once in the Old Testament concerning Moses, and then even concerning Jesus in the New Testament. Except the Pharaoh in that particular instance was Herod, who was looking to kill, Jesus, and the children who was under the age of 2 and so forth and so on. So it's a rendition in the Old and New Testament. So what happens is that as I was sitting there looking and analyzing Minister Farrakhan's speech, he threw a dig at the Moors as he was stating as if nationality is not the call of the day. As a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he even stated that nature is over nationality, in which that I can agree. However, to say nature is over nationality, then you have to be coming from the opinion that nationality is not based on someone who's a natural person. Because that was the whole point of declaring nationality, is to put you back or bring you back into a status as a natural person. If you go to Blackstone Dictionary 7th edition, it states specifically that that a natural person, i.e., is indigenous. Now, he did say that we were indigenous and that we was here before Pilgrims and the Mayflower. All right? He did someone state that. He did. However, to me it was somewhat contradictory because we're supposed to be doing or having self-determination in one instant, but then in the next breath, we're going to ask the Albion for 100 million acres of land, about the equivalent size of California. That is one of the things in which that they supposed to be talking about is 100 million acres, so that those of the Nation of Islam in particular, and those who want to come, I believe, to the land, or talk about buying large purchases of land is one of the other things in which that was talked about. But once again, we're dealing with colorable titles or labels in which that, based on all research, and that's what we're basing it on.
And he mentioned no allodium title for those lands. He's talking about buying, right? He didn't mention that.
Buying. Right. Now, of course, there's plenty of land out here in which that. Now, before I get to that, when you look in Blackstone Dictionary, once again, 4th edition, and you look up land, embedded inside of the definition is the word Moors. So the term Moor instantly ties you back to land. Now, this is something on which that Dr. John Henry Clarke spoke about. He spoke about that instantaneously we need a word in which that ties us back to land. All right? He said black does not do that.
No.
Negro does not do that. All right? Colored does not do that. This is what John Henry Clarke stated now. One of the foremost historians of the 20th century. All right? So he said that we need a word in which that instantaneously ties us back to land. Now, what word best described that is the word in which that Dr. Yusuf Ben Yakane spoke of within his Cultural Genocide book, in which he says these are just some of the honorable names that we have had in history. And the first word is the word Moors in his list. Now, this is something in which that bypasses most people who just coming into this movement, they have all this anger, you know, and they don't know what to do with it except try to, you know, disperse it upon those who already been doing this work for the 10, 20, 30 years. But the point is this, is that Dr. Ben had a PhD in Moorish history from Barcelona, from the University of Barcelona, Spain.
Wow.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So when he's talking about Africans, he's interchangeably talking about Moors. To him, in his research, they was one and the same. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You get another book called What They Never Told You in History Class by Indo-Kemet Kush. And we talk about who are the Moors. He specifically states that based on the research that he's found, that the Moors are Africans. Now, the word Asiatic is used. However, if you go to Prophet Noble Drew Ali's divinely prepared book referred to as the Holy Quran Circle 7, he uses the word Africa and African in there more than 19 times. Okay? Now, what that means is not only is the word Asiatic. Now, let me explain something, because anyone can go back and watch Dr. Khalid Muhammad's last speech. He actually explains the word Asian or Asiatic in particular. He states that the word Asian or Asiatic means body, B-O-D-Y, body. And this body is talking about the landmass of planet Earth. So the whole planet Earth is called Asia. But the pinpoint on Asia or in Asia where we come from is Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Now, based on all the research in which that our great doctors have done, Dr. Ben Yakinen, Dr. John Henry Clarke, Dr. Ashwa Kwesi, Renoka Rashidi, Professor Wayne Chandler, all right, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small, we all conclude that life started or originated in Africa. That is the place, or the oldest place of relics, the oldest place of fossils that has been able to be shown historically through anthropology and through archaeology. Okay? That means all life comes or springs forth from out of Africa, and then we spread it throughout the diaspora. Now, Negroes have a tendency to respond and give opinions before they actually read. And this is one of the downfalls of our people. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone has them. So keep the mouth shut until you actually do research. There's a book called Hidden History, right, by Michael Creedmoor. There's another book, all right, another book called Forbidden Archaeology, in which that they state in the book, all right, Richard L. Thompson, Michael Creedmoor, that relics, R-E-L-I-C-S, relics, not fossils, all right? The oldest fossil that has been found is Dagenesh, which is Lucy, which dates back to 2.8 to 3.2 million years ago, But the oldest relics, all right, has been dated back to 2.8 billion with a B years ago in South Africa. Okay? We're not talking about mysticism. We're talking about facts. We're talking about anthropology. We're talking about archaeology. Or in this particular case, archaeology. The relic in which that was found was the metallic spheres with a line at the equator. As a matter of fact, they stated there was some type of iron ore or some type of metallic ore in which that this type of metal has yet to be found on planet Earth, at least in the areas that they have been able to dig at. Has not been found yet. All right? They said that these metallic spheres were so perfectly made that it had to have been made in non-gravity. In other words, there was no gravity when they was making this. These particular metallic spheres. So, when we're talking about history, we understand that when you get to the Moors existed before Greece. All right? Matter of fact, there were so-called blacks in Greece before the Persian invasion, in which that you have of the Grecian so-called empire.
Right.
We had the Minoans. We had the Cretans. The Minoans were part of the Egyptian sect, or the ancient Egyptian sect of Men. Men with the fertility deity, which was a form of Amen, Amen-Ra. And the Minoans was part of the worshippers of Men, that particular school of thought. Because that's essentially all we're talking about is schools of thought. Remember, you had to go to school, the university, or Wasset, or Thebes, or Karnak. You had to go to these universities for 40 years. 40 years. Not 12 years from kindergarten to 12th grade. Or another 4 years. Or another 2 years plus another one in order to get a PhD. And then have to write their thesis after just about 16 years of schooling. No, we're talking about 40 years you had to go to school before you became the son of Bunham, or what was known as the son of the son of the son, or the son of God, where you will reach the mastership or the adeptship, or what we refer to as the PhD level. For those who don't understand what a PhD is, it just simply is a philosophy degree. The word, the letters PH is philosophy. It's short for philosophy. The D is degree. It's a philosophy degree. So even when you are talking to these so-called scholars, you know, in one sense, it is simply a philosophy degree. They're able to philosophize.
Wow.
They are best at philosophizing. They have a philosophy. Okay? And that's no disrespect. That's just simply saying that the people that you hold in high esteem, they are philosophers, even at their best, no matter what field that they're in, whether it's sociology, whether it's psychology, whether it's criminal justice, or law or jurisprudence degree from a law school, whatever the case is, the PhD is simply, that's what it is. It's at the highest level philosophy degree. Now, part of the word philosophy, you look it up, and the dictionary, you see the word metaphysics. So when you're saying that metaphysics is pseudoscience, then you have to include philosophy. But see, that's because people don't understand how to break words down. They don't know linguistics or understand linguistics or etymology, or as Brother Tosh would say, etymon. Right? Yeah. You know, so when we're talking about Asia, remember, we're talking about the body, which is the earth itself. That was one of the ancient names during the time of what we refer to as Pangea. All right? The word Pangea just simply means all land, you know, and which that is talking about when it was tied together. That dates back to about 200 million to 250 million years ago. But if we're talking about, there was relics in which that was found in South Africa dating back to 2.8 billion years ago, then we know very well that we're dealing with information which is much further back. All right. Now, when we get on the subject of the so-called Moors, in which that's one of the topics in which that we would have to actually, in which that was actually thrown around somewhat when you refer to indigenous, when you refer to aboriginal. We know that nationality, right, and nationality, which should have been spoken about as one of the things in which that can help is back, because, like I said, Dr. John Henry Clarke specifically stated that we are looking for a nationality. We are in search of a nationality. All right? So he was essentially telling us that we didn't have a nationality. Now, why this is important to understand is because in the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, it states that we have the right. All right, you read Article 5. It was once Article 5 before the draft, Article 6. It states that indigenous people have the right to a nationality. If you read the Declaration on Human Rights or the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, it states around Article 5 the same thing, that every person, man, woman, or child, has a right to a nationality. Now, what is nationality? Well, when you look up into the Blackstone's Dictionary, one of the main definitions is that nationality is your political status, your allegiance.
Mm-hmm. Nationhood.
All right? Now, when you pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and you believe that it was the Star-Spangled Banner, that was inappropriate. That was incorrect, and actually that was fraud, in which that was perpetrated against you from kindergarten up to the 6th grade. You had to put your little hand over your heart and recite that. Okay? When you look at the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between Morocco and the United States, you find that Morocco, which is Al-Morocc, which is America, had a superior position. This is why it's called the United States of America. America is not of the United States. That means one had a superior position. All right? We know that America is actually what? North, Central, and South America. And they're adjoining islands called Americana. All right? Now, the United States is in America. So when they say that the President of the United States is the leader of America or of the free world, they're tripping. It's because he's not the President of America. He's the President of the United States Corporation. And we are the people of America. You look up once again in Blackstone's Dictionary 1936 edition. I think it was the Universal Webster Dictionary. It states in there that when you look up the word American is Aboriginal, copper-colored natives.
And they call us copperheads.
Right, here in the Americas, prior to the invasion of their territory by the Europeans. The Europeans, meaning they was not here. They was not here.
But it took on the title American.
Right. They are the immigrants. Then they came up with the story because we was copper-colored, meaning that we was nearly the same color as those in Africa, but we already migrated here. And I don't want to say migrated because really we was here before the continental drift. There are some who came over, and you go and read about Mansa Musa, about Mansa Musa or Musa's travels. He came with 200 ships, all right, and then he later came with, later sent out a crew of 1,000 ships, and there's no documentation of Mansa returning. All right, if you read the history of the Mansa Musa, I think it was the second, if I'm not mistaken, but you can read the history, and it was 200 he sent out the first time, ships, and 1,000, and he was coming here to be with his brothers and sisters here in the New World, as they called it, but that was already an old world based on the Olmecs already being here over 5,000 years before that, in which that, who was called the Ish, or She people, I should say, all right, and they was already here, all right, and so he was coming here to be with the brothers and sisters here, all right. So when people say about the slave ships, well, we got proof of us coming with over 1,000 ships, 1,200 ships, more than actually 400 years before the so-called slave trade and before Christopher Columbus, in which that was just this past Monday, in which that people was talking about.
Right.
All right, Christopher Columbus Day, which is soon will be Indigenous Day or Indigenous Peoples Day.
Not Native American.
All right, and not Native American, but Indigenous Peoples Day. Okay, if you're not mistaken, I believe it's in Wisconsin that that they have changed Columbus Day to now Indigenous Peoples Day. And pretty soon, other states will have to follow suit. All right, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's Wisconsin. If not, then please forgive me. I'm doing all this freestyle, so the guy, is off the dome. But we have to understand the definition of indigenous, because that's something which that Minister Farrakhan did not make mention of when he referred to the Native Americans or the Indians, and even ourselves as being indigenous, and us who was here already before Columbus. All right, I wish you would have made that more pronounced and put more emphasis
right, more
on
understandable.
That. Right, and made that more of the understanding instead of just saying that we just came from Africa, 400 years ago, because this is not a recent trip that we have come here. Like we just stated, Mansa came almost 500 years, almost 500 years before Christopher Columbus, with almost 1,200 ships. Okay? Then the Olmecs was already here over 5,000 years ago. Okay? We have reports of the Phoenicians and the Canaanites based on Ancient American Magazine of them already traveling here based on 1200 A.D. Okay? Through 1200 A.D. So that would be actually almost 300 years before Christopher Columbus.
So what is Minister Farrakhan talking about?
Right. So these are things in which that should have been talked about, is our impacts that we have had here in the Americas prior to the amalgamation between the Chinese, it's called the and the Olmecs. So that's how actually the Native Americans, as far as the Western, more so the Western Indians came about, as they would say. Now, I don't like to use the word Indians in that particular instance. We would say, even though the word Indo or Indian, means so-called black people. The word Hindu or Inda means black people or God's people. All right? But we want to keep that word specifically for, those from East India. You know what I'm saying? That way we understand. When we talk about Native Americans, when we're talking about indigenous Americans, we're talking about the word native, talking more so about those who was amalgamated with the so-called black genes and the so-called yellow genes, in which that we get the so-called red genes, or the red man, as they would say. All right, and I'm just showing you the illustration of using the colors, how stupid that shit sounds. Mm-hmm. All right, but soon we'll get it. We'll get it sooner or later here. Mm-hmm. All right, so now when we look at the United Nations definition of indigenous, it specifically states, 1, those who were here and who had historical continuity in this land prior to the invasion of their territory by the Europeans. Now, that is the definition of indigenous. Then it says, number 2, as well as those who was brought here to the New World, and those who wish to free themselves, or who have freed themselves and wish to be tied to back to the culture they've been torn. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, that's 2. Now, that definition of indigenous includes those who was already here, who we refer to as the Olmecs, who we refer to as the people of Mansa. Of course, Mansa came from the Ghanese Malian Empire, which is later called the Moroccan Empire by Dr. John Henry Clarke. If you get the book, the African Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust by Dr. John Henry Clarke, he states that in the book that the Ghanese, the Ghanaian, all right, the Ghanaian, those from Ghana, and the Malians, when they combined their empires together, it became known as the Moroccan Empire. All right? He states this in the book. All right? So, what that means is that you are looking at the West Africans who is here from out of Ghana, or what was, of course, Ghana was much broader and vast than than now, and Mali, as they combined to form the Moroccan Empire, and they came here with Mansa, all right, the second, almost 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Okay? How we have proof of this, if you go and read Dr. Clive Winter's book, all right? Or either go to his website. Dr. Clive Winter, he states this specifically, that the Lenape language, which is the Delaware Moors, the Nanacoke Moors, which is all part of the Algonquin Moors or the Algonquins, he states that they, their language were very close and similar to the hieroglyphics or the Medu Neter. And also, it was almost identical to the Mandis or the Mandinka language. Okay? Now, the Mandis or the Mandinka, or who was called the Mandingo, all right, are related to the Dogons, all right, in Mali. The Dogons were once the astrologers and astronomers of ancient Kemet or Tamari, yeah, right, who left out of there 6,000 BC, meaning that they left out of Egypt almost 8,000 years ago. Okay? These Olmecs are the same, or the She people are the same as the Malians from the Mandingo tribe. When they came down from out of the Delaware Moors, the Micmac, all the way down to even the Mayans and the Olmecs, in particular the Olmec language, they found so many traits between the language of the Mandis and the Olmecs, showing that the Olmecs or the She people were the same people. So historically, Mansa knew that his brothers and sisters came from, because obviously they kept that up as oral tradition within their tribes. Okay? So this is where we find this information at, concerning history. You just go and read. That's all I'm asking is read. That's what Minister Farrakhan has been doing, was reading and studying this information, because right now this information is going way beyond the rhetoric of just the Nation of Islam.
Yeah.
It's going well beyond the rhetoric of just even the Moorish Science Temple of America. It's going way beyond just the rhetoric of the Nation of Gods and Earth.
Yeah.
As far as just the basic lessons. The basic lessons is good, and it will get us to think. However, you have to have plus degrees in this. And this is where the plus degrees comes at, is putting the pieces of this puzzle together. And I can talk because I've been part of all of them. And I've been studying all of them for over almost 30-some-odd years. Okay? I came into the Nation Gods and Earth at the age of 14. Okay? I started following Minister Farrakhan at the age of 15. So this is no criticism. This is just simply an acknowledgement of where we have to go, and that we have to tie these pieces of this puzzle back together, or place the pieces of the puzzle into a puzzle so that we can see the whole picture. We're not seeing the whole picture with what is going on with this so-called black leadership that is out here. Right. And it's not fair to the masses of the people who are truly trying to seek freedom and justice. What sense does it make as being part of the 9 battlefronts in which that Dr. Francis from her book ISIS and Dr. Nick Fuller from his book Countering Confrontation of White Supremacy? And they both say that one of the 9 battlefronts is law. How are you going to get justice if you do not know law? That is from universal law down to the mundane jurisprudence law. All right? Common sense law. Constitutional law. And that's the so-called United States Constitution, or the Constitution of the United States, or the Constitution for the United States of America. That includes the Constitution in which that you make for your organization, whether it's the Moorish Science Temple of America or whether it's any other organization in which that you have formed for yourself. All right? The guidelines for any body, because that's what the word Constitution means, is a body. All right? Asia means a body of people. All right? When a body of people come together, Asia and then Asiatic means a body of people. That's all that Dr. Khaled was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
All right? On earth. Matter of fact, even within the Holy Kabbalah, it speaks, A.E. Wakes, he speaks of the word Asia as being the realm of the making. All right? We come here to make things. All right? That's what this is. It's the realm of the making. So when we're talking about freedom, how do we make ourselves free as Asiatics? All right? A body of people. How do we make ourselves free as Africans? Specifying the location in which that the word African do not come from Scipio Africanus. You've been lied about that. That was something in which that was taught in teachings, but we find out that Scipio Africanus, his real name was Scipio Presidius or Pricius, in which that the name Africanus was a nickname given to him by his generals after the defeat of Hannibal. It was a nickname of his defeat of an African, not him naming Africa. And that's one of the another problems or one of the misconceptions that is now within the so-called conscious community. We have to go back and do research on that, because there's ancient African Sumerian words in which that states Af or Afu means body, temple, flesh, house. Ra means light, sun, photonic energy. Ka means spirit. So Af, Ra, Ka is talking about your spiritual sun inside of your body, which is your spiritual sun is your soul. So it's talking about your soul inside of your house, which is your physical body or your temple. So yes, you are African based on the concept of what is meant in Sumerian or what is meant in the Metu Neter, which is the ancient Egyptian language. All right? Now, this is why this is why we shouldn't have a problem with that overstanding. And this information that is now coming out in which that helps rectify those misconceptions. All right? My book in particular, The First World Order, goes into it extensively in order to try to bypass some of the misconceptions in which that is grasped our people in this conscious movement. And the reason why for all the disagreements and problems that's going on is because we have a lot of Facebook and YouTube Moors now. YouTube, you know what I'm saying? And there's no disrespect per se to any of those social medias, but the problem is this, is that people are not studying. They're just simply watching the videos that is on YouTube or when they see on Facebook and think they have scholarship. They have never gone to a library in order to do any real research, but then all of a sudden they're scholars in this information, you know. And then when they see someone who has read hundreds and thousands of books, you know, they go and try to criticize them as if, you know, they got all the information now from watching a few, after they heard someone say something, or say, or gave some type of information. You know, and that's the problem in which that is taking place. You know, and then everybody's trying to disunify. This is how you know these individuals are linear thinkers. They actually are Asian agents, or as Chief Jelani always used to say, is either through ignorance or conspiracy. All right? Because it's real simple, because for those who want to say about the Hebrews, let me speak about this too, about the Hebrews and the Moors and how it's different. No, it's not, because the first Hebrews, you can go back and do your research, that the first Hebrews here, you know, who had a society or an organization, All right. His name was Leon Rizzulli, or Rizzulli, and he formed it back in 1889. Some say 1899, but it was the first Hebrew sect here within the Americas, at least recorded anyway, modern day. That became the Moorish Zionist Temple. Right? That's what that name was. The name was the Moorish Zionist Temple.
Yeah.
Now, that was before the Moorish Science Temple, in which that sounds very similar. That was before the Moorish Science Temple, because this temple was formed in 1889 through 1899. Noble Drew Ali's temple didn't come until 1913. We come to find out that his family, which he had family in New York, and the temple was formed in, the Moor Zionist temple was formed in Harlem, as well as also in Brooklyn. And that the one in Brooklyn, his family was part of. So that meant that he could have possibly had influences from the Moorish Zionist temple, which was a Hebrew, a so-called African Hebrew sect of Moors. So the Moorish thing is not different than the Hebrew thing. They're both the same thing. And then if you go and do your research, you find that the Hebrew language and even Arabic language both come from the Demonic script and the Mooritic script of the Tamarian language called Metu Neter. But in order to know this, you must have studied some type of linguistics, which the average person does not. But yet, want to be, come on out and act as if they're the scholar and got, all the information all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem that is going on. This is the reason why for all these so-called debates, because they're not actually trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. They're trying to create diversity in order to keep getting paid in some shape, form, or fashion.
Right. The agents.
So that's one of the problems that I'm seeing. And I had to make mention of that because the jabs in which that was taken by Minister Farrakhan on that regard of nature being higher than nationality, or not necessarily something in which that we have to do right now, when we know that nationality is the call of the day. It is something that we need to do. All right? Why? Well, it's real simple. I give you several good reasons. We just talked about Francis Cress Welsing's book, ISIS paper, in which that one of the 9 battlefronts that we need to counteract white supremacy is law, and we can't do that in their law schools, because that's why they have to give you an oath to take and to swear an oath to what we refer to as the Bar Association, the British Accredited Regency or Registry. All right? So you have to commit to the Queen of England in that regard. So actually you give up your citizenship. Right. All right, you actually give up your citizenship if you want to know the truth of it, because, and truthfully, there is no real citizenship under the United States Corporation. All right, because the United States is not a nation. All right, and if you say it is a government, then look at the word government. The word government means govern, which means control, and the word ment, short for mental, which means mind. So the people there don't have no real substance or understanding of that subject matter. They don't know it. All right? They don't understand that particular, connection. Matter of fact, while we was at the United Nations back in 2000, and I believe it's 2007, 2008, we had a representative from Morocco who actually spoke before us at the United Nations, and he said, "We are in your land. We have your flag." Now, what do you mean by they have our flag? Well, because after the dismantlement or the abolishment of the consular court of Morocco here in the United States of America back in 1956, by 1959, they was waving the similar flag, except this is crisscross and ours is simply overlaid. So it looks similar, but it's not quite. But that's what he meant, is that their flag is actually our flag. All right? And that's what he was talking about when he said that our flag is their flag. All right? And their flag is our flag. So that's really what he's saying in that regard. And when he said it, it shocked a whole lot of people, to hear him, tell the truth, in that regard, because we were not expecting it, But also, when we talk about something else that was being said, we know that Mr. Farrakhan has his nationality, even though he was saying nationality wasn't important some way, nature was higher, but he has his nationality. All right, he got his nationality through National Grand Sheik Bratton Bay from out of Baltimore, Maryland, Temple 13. All right, and he did that when he had problems coming back into the country. I believe when he left in order to go to Libya. Did you hang your purple? He had problems. He had problems coming back into the country, so he needed Moorish help. You know what I'm saying? And he was able to get that help through Temple 13 up under National Grand Sheik Bratton Bay, Joe Bratton Bay. All right, so so that was the situation